In this video, I'd like to talk about a few breathing tools. These little devices are pretty handy and quite popular. However, I do believe there are occasions where people use them wrong. They're not exactly sure how to do it. So I thought I'd walk you through how I like to use these devices, and perhaps it'll be helpful to you. The first one is very simple. All it is a breathing tube, and you can pick up a whole bag of these couplers. They're PVC couplers at Home Depot or wherever, and they come pre-cut. This is 3/4 inch. And the purpose behind the breathing tube is to open up your oral cavity where your tongue is, and a little bit farther back where what we call the pharyngeal space is typically where we close down. So it helps keep your tongue low as you play, and that creates a more resonant tone. When you breathe on the tube, it goes in between your teeth, and you seal it off with your lips, and you should not hear any sound. Do not create a Darth Vader noise. So you just breathe really normally on it. Here's another very effective way to use this tube. Get your horn up into playing position, keep the slide locked, like you're about ready to play, and then just turn your head so that you can put the tube in your mouth and take a few easy breaths on the tube. And then go right to the trombone. There's something about the proximity of doing the tube in correlation with the instrument which gets your brain thinking in the right way, so that you start to associate the openness of the tube with how you should play the instrument, because this is how open you want that space to be to get the best tone. You can be a little more vigorous. So try not to put any space at all in between the breath and the blow onto the instrument. That's a great way to use a breathing tube. Here's a device which will measure your capacity. With this one, you inhale on the device, and you'll see the plunger go up, and it's going to tell you how much air that you're taking in. So you want to start with empty lungs, and the machine has to, you have to inhale pretty slowly because there's a measure you'll see right on this side. You want to keep that measure in between the two marks. If you inhale too quickly, you'll overwhelm the mechanism. So start with empty lungs. So that was about 3.5 liters. That's not very good. Now let me see if I can break that record. I'll start with emptier lungs. So that's about 4 liters. As a 50-year-old man, that could be a little bit better, but I'm not a smoker, so that shouldn't matter. What you see is what you get. So once you're fully grown, there's no way that you can change the size of your lungs. That's very important to remember. So I don't want you thinking about this device as exercise. It's simply a measuring device. So if you're curious as to what, how many liters of air you have available, you can use this measure. This scale is in milliliters, so you'll see 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, and what that means is if you've got 4,000, that's basically 4 liters, and that's fairly average, maybe a little below average. Smaller people have smaller lungs, so if that's true in your case, you might have 2.5 liters, some females in particular, and it's nothing personal, it's just that smaller bodies mean smaller lungs. That just means you have to be all the more efficient. Here's a device that's often referred to as a breath builder, and the incentive here is to lift the ping pong ball by blowing into the tube. Now if you want to add a wrinkle, you can put your mouthpiece in and blow through your mouthpiece. And for yet another wrinkle, you can try and lift the ball and buzz into the mouthpiece. This is much harder. So it's even harder if you try to buzz a high note. You really got to blow to make that happen. On the top here, you have 3 holes, 1 big one and 2 little ones. If I cover the big hole, that means I'm forcing all of the air out of 2 really small holes. That means there's more resistance, and this is the equivalent to playing a high note. You really got to move the air intensely in order to lift that ball. Now I'm going to cover the big hole and 1 of the little holes. Now this is the equivalent to playing a really high note. Now this next step is extremely important. You finish with the ping pong ball, you put your mouthpiece into the horn, and you blow just like you did with the ping pong ball. Now that is a little bit of an exaggeration, but it does get the air moving at the right speed. That is the key that many students don't understand. For high notes, you have to move the air fast, and it will feel very much like lifting that ping pong ball. I have one more to show you. This one's called an incentive spirometer, and it's got a little gauge on here so you can make the flow higher or lower. So depending on what instrument you play, if you're a tuba player, you might want to adjust it so you need more air. And for this one, we turn it upside down, and once again we can lift the ball. And this one is really great for checking out your articulation. So if I blow and tongue, and I'm going to adjust this just a little bit. If I blow and tongue, I want to minimize the ball bouncing. And so that's moving the air and just letting the tongue flap in the breeze, which is a good thing. That's the basic idea. If I were to stop the air with the tongue, here's what you would see. And that, while you may need it at times for staccato notes, is not a good default. So this is really good for encouraging airflow through articulation, and you can also do this one with your mouthpiece. You might see a little bit of bounce in the ball, but you want to minimize the amount. Now if I were to apply that kind of airflow and articulation, here's what you'll hear. You get consistency of tone, fullness and richness of tone, and a nice legato articulation. Now I can always make that articulation more staccato and keep moving the air. So there you saw me go from legato to staccato. The point being, regardless of the style of articulation, it's still well supported, the air is moving, and the tongue is flapping in the breeze.